Welcome to this episode of the Power of One Voice series, where we explore one of the most influential student campaigns in one of the most influential student organizations, the CUNY University Student Senate, for free metro cards for CUNY students. Our guest today is Tinnycua Williams. Hi, Tinnycua.
Hi, Sally.
How are you doing today?
I'm good.
Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
So, I am the USS Vice Chair of Graduate Affairs, and I also serve as the Executive Chair of the Graduate Student Council at the City College of New York.
Tell us a little bit about how you became Executive Chair of the Graduate Student Association at CCNY.
So, I had enrolled as a student because my employer necessitated that I obtain a master's degree.
Mm-hmm.
And when I got involved in my activities, I saw that there was an advertisement to actually run for election for the Graduate Student Council.
Mm-hmm.
I had no idea that the Graduate Student Council even existed on my campus until I saw that. And because when I was an undergrad, I had had experience within student government, I decided that I should run. And I was successfully elected.
Okay.
And then it just started a whole journey. And I found that what started off as something that I thought would just be an extra activity turned to be something greater as I really sought to advocate for graduate students on my campus.
And you and I met for the first time at the USS retreat in 2023.
Yeah.
How was your experience being exposed to USS for the first time?
It was amazing because I had gone to the retreat because our previous chair had gone and he had participated. And I wanted to just see what it was about. And then when I walked into the room, you could feel the greatness there. And as I was learning about the University Student Senate, I was really, really impressed and realized that I was among some really serious fellow students. And all of the information that I received about how I could advocate on my own campus, how we could advocate university-wide, was just really appealing to me.
And then you decided at some point to run for vice chair under different circumstances.
Yeah.
So before we go into free metro cards, I really want to hear a reflection on your experience as a vice chair so far. What was the highlight if we exclude the campaign?
I would say that there was a number of highlights. Being in plenary feels like you're part of the United Nations. Everybody's there.
You say that a lot.
Everybody's represented. And it's just awesome because it's a microcosm of what our city looks like. And it also begins to give you a sense as to how government actually works. So that's really effective. I think having the opportunity to go to the Black Caucus, Black and Puerto Rican and Asian Caucus, was just absolutely amazing. I remember growing up as a native New Yorker, hearing about the Black Caucus and wondering about it, but to actually have the experience, to be in the room, I didn't realize that it's actually like a professional development opportunity that our legislators actually convene, very informative, and that lay citizens can attend. So that was awesome for me.
USS is really an experience. You get into it, and then what you find is just mind-blowing, and then the experience becomes what you put into it. And you've put quite a lot in your working in USS.
Thank you.
For me, one of the highlights of the process of getting to the campaign was that day we spoke about reducing the student population in order to get milestones. And you're a graduate student. And we know that the support for graduate students is not the best. We're just starting to talk more about graduate tab this year and stuff like that, but we're still struggling to get the aid necessary to support graduate students. So for you as a graduate student, to hear that we were really excited about free metro cards, and today we're discussing free metro cards for community colleges as a milestone. How did that make you feel that day? What was your opinion?
So I saw it as the beginning of something great, because sometimes when you're putting in work and you're advocating, you're not necessarily doing it for a present time. You're usually laying seeds for something that's coming at a time that you may not even see. So I am hopeful that there will come a time when there will be free Metro cards for all students. Graduate students face a lot of challenges. Many of us have our own households that we're running. Some of us are single parents. Others of us are in essence not being able to take income because we have to take on full-time schedules, amongst other responsibilities. And so having the opportunity to have a free Metro card can take away some of those expenses. The MTA is cracking down on fare evasion at a significant rate. So they're sending out police officers. In some cases, they're in plain clothes to target fare evaders. And they're framing it as if these are individuals who have the ability to pay, but they're just choosing not to. The problem is that that's not the case with a lot of our students. They don't have the ability to pay. And they're trying to make the choice between, do I go to class or do I miss class because I can't afford to pay? In many cases, these students are not only going to university to go to class, but they're also going to their jobs so that they can make that additional money to pay for fares. So ultimately, it's really important that this campaign goes through, not just for the initial pilot group, but also for students across university wide, so that we ensure that students don't have to make those terrible choices and be targeted when they're trying to just better their situation and get a fair education. There isn't, as you said, as much financial aid for graduate students as there is for undergraduate students. So that means oftentimes we're cash rolling our experience with the hope that it's an investment towards something greater. So any additional support could make a difference. And I know of some graduate students that weren't able to continue because they ran out of cash. So ultimately, the more that we can do to support our graduate students, the more we're not only investing in them, but we're also investing in the city, because these are in many cases, seasoned professionals that are going to then come back and give back to the community.
I wouldn't have said it better. Your campus was even one of the first, or the first campus where we did tabling when we were approaching March in March, our annual big rally. So how was it sharing the campaign with the student body for the first time? How did the undergraduate student government react? How were the students who were coming to the table to learn about USS and the campaign? How was that introduction and that interaction for students who are not necessarily in leadership?
The reception was very positive. Many of the students were excited. They were excited at the fact that they were having a say in something that was going to impact them. In addition to tabling at City College, I also went to the School of Labor and Urban Studies, and that's primarily all graduate students. And they were just excited that USS was even bringing this information to them. I think fundamentally, students want to be involved. They want to advocate. We just sometimes need to come to them. And so my experience being in graduate affairs for USS has been very positive. It's been eye-opening. Ultimately, what I would say is that this is a real opportunity to not only have impact for the current students within CUNY, but students for years yet to come. Because it starts with something like Metro cards, but then it could even go to even greater things later on.
Absolutely. And in terms of later on, how has that process, the free Metro cards, the USS, the student leadership, you were at the forefront of meeting elected officials in Albany. You came to so many of the rallies, if not all of them. How has that changed or improved your perspective on what's next to come for you?
Well, I will say that as a personal citizen, it actually empowered me. So I had recently, I was looking at my electric bills. This is a very small thing, but my electric bills tend to be pretty high. And I went to my city councilman's office and I met with her staff and I told her that I was a CUNY student. I told them that I lived in their district. if not for this experience with USS, I wouldn't have thought to do that. I might have looked at my own devices, but seeing that elected officials are actually partners, and that's the whole point of why they're there, because they're there as stakeholders, they're there as partners, and we are actually the ultimate stakeholders because we vote these people in. And from the minute that I was able to become an active voter when I turned 18, I have been voting just about in every election ever since. So I know the power of my vote. I know the power of what that can do. But this just expanded my mind in all different ways that I could, engage in advocacy on behalf of the community.
So would you say that USS contributes to civic engagement for any student who joins the organization and gives it their time?
Oh, for sure, without question. Because now, not only do you get to see what it looks like, you get to see the results of it in action. It was all because of the collaboration of USS and all of the student voices. And people sometimes don't get involved in the process because they don't think that it's actually going to make a difference. But we actually did it to the extent that elected officials, they saw the scars.
They did.
And they were like, oh yeah, I know, free Metro cards, right? Like the actual messaging was so clear because we stayed on one page and we were within one accord, and it was just awesome. The march, amazing.
Yeah.
It was amazing.
We moved with one voice.
Yes.
As we say. And you're right, everybody wearing the scarves. These were one of my highlights too. Seeing that people would come back to me, Sally, I gave out my scarf to somebody. Can I have another scarf?
Yeah.
That was fun. It was this idea of sharing and advocating for what we want as a collective first, and then going for what we want personal on our different campuses. We are in election season. And I know that civic engagement and voter awareness is something that is really important to you. We have these conversations offline a lot. So, and you're also very vocal and an advocate for better communication and interactions between people of different generations.
Yeah.
So what would you tell to the young voters today, because we interact with people all the time, so we know of the skepticism, we know of the question, someone who's not so sure if they should come out and vote?
That's a really good question. And I recognize that for many young people, since we're talking about that generation, it may feel like your vote doesn't matter. But I'm going to tell you that it definitely does. I'm going to tell you a quick story. I remember when I was an undergraduate, I had the opportunity to intern with DC 37, one of the largest unions within New York City. And we had a day for David Dinkins, who at that time was the incumbent, who was running for re-election. We had him come to speak to the union workers who were going to be making the phone calls on his behalf. Needless to say, he did not give a lot of time. He told a story and then he left. And then he didn't get elected. And I think that was because the voters made the decision that, you know what, perhaps I'm going to do something different. If more people had come out to vote on his behalf, he might have had a second term. I think it's the same thing here. It doesn't even matter at this point what your politics are, but exercise your right to vote. There were people who died, literally, from Queens College, in fact, who died advocating for the civil rights and for people's right to vote. And so it doesn't come without anything. It's not just something to be taken for granted, because as quickly as we have it, it can be taken away. The other thing is that when you engage in the process, because you're not just voting for individuals, usually on the ballot, there's also information about legislation that impacts your community that you wouldn't know about if you don't engage in the process. So I would just say get involved, do your homework, learn, and you will be surprised. You can actually have an impact on your community.
I think this is a brilliant way to say it. So to close out, what would you say it means to you after your experience in USS, after your experience in the Free Metro Cards campaign, seeing all the progress that we made, what it means for you to move with one voice?
I think it means power. It means that there is power in one, but there's so much greater power with the many. And you don't realize that until you actually experience it. Even as I talk about it, like I'm getting chills because like ultimately what one voice means is kind of like the hand, right? So with your thumb, you might be able to do some things, but when you have your thumb and your forefinger, you can do something even greater. You utilize all of your fingers, you can actually hold something, you can do some things. You're so much stronger. So if we continue to exercise that, I see even greater things for the future of students at CUNY.
Well, thank you, Tinnycua. Great
Thank you.
conversation as always. And I look forward to seeing the great things you'll achieve in the future. Thank you all.